We are live now. Over to you,
Yeah,
sir.
we are just waiting. Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you very much, Nitin and Joheb and Dheeraj. Friends, uh, should we wait for another couple of minutes? We already have some people. Yeah. Friends, very good afternoon. We are very proud to have one of our own alums, Mr. with us, who is going to educate us, who is going to speak to us on venture capital and consumer industry in India this afternoon. This will be hosted by, this webinar will be hosted by Khan, who is FMS graduate of batch 2009, who is the CEO of Validara, APJ Staya and Sovereign Group, as well as he's looking after the education interest of the APJ Group. Moderators, we have Mr. Nitin Gupta, who is FMS graduate of 2008, Dheeraj Jain, who is FMS graduate of 2017, and we welcome all the participants, all the faculty members, my batchmates, Kamal's batchmates, who must have joined this group or who are likely to join this group. Friends, during this COVID period, I think one thing which has come out very well is that individuals, groups, and organizations who will be proactive, they will sustain. The people who will wait for COVID to get over, they will only keep on waiting because somebody else has already snatched away most of the market opportunities. As it is, the market opportunities are shrinking primarily because of the circumstances, the conditions which are happening outside. The economy is slowing down globally, not only in India. Yes, because we are a part of India, so we keep on getting to know more about India. But everywhere, there's the same story. And then media and administration is more busy towards trying to get justice to both Riya Chakrabarti as well as Sushant Singh Rajput. So industry and all of us, the people who are in corporate world, we have to start thinking on new lines, on different lines, because it is very clear only the proactive, only the more competent and confident people will not only survive, will also grow during this period. And the people who will keep on waiting for something to happen will have to keep on waiting. So friends, we are very fortunate, we are very proud, we're privileged to have Kamaljeet Singh with us to speak to us on venture capital and consumer industry in India. Kamal is the founder and managing partner of Fireside Ventures. Fireside has invested US $50 million across 18 investments in the early stage of consumer brand companies and is in the process of closing a $100 million US second fund, big money. He has been passionate about mentoring and helping build consumer brands in India and has been involved as an investor with brands like Paperboard, ID Fresh, Epigamia, Yoga Award, Licious, Mama Earth, Vedam Trees, Boat, etc., etc. He has been investing in the early stage ecosystem in India for the past 19 years, first as a director of Trial Group, India, and later as a co-founder and senior managing director of Helion Ventures Partners. Prior to his investing career, Kamal spent over 13 years in consumer marketing with Hindustan Unilever and Intel India. He has over 30 years of experience, in fact, 33 years plus today, of experience in venture investing, marketing, sales, and business development across diverse sectors. He holds an MBA from full-time from FMS, specializing in marketing and finance. So we are proud to have one of our own alums speaking to us today, and a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from Punjab University, Chandigarh. Kamal, This is my privilege to welcome you this afternoon today on this virtual forum, and we are proud to have you here to speak on this webinar.
Thank you.
Over to Joheb.
Thank you, Singla sir.
Yeah.
Kaval, it's lovely having you with us. Is there an echo which is coming from my side? No, it's better. Yeah.
No, not.
Okay. So it's we heartily welcome you and for taking time on this Saturday afternoon and coming to meet all of us FMS alumni. Obviously, Singla sir and you have a long relationship, and Singla sir has already given us an introduction, quite a well-drafted introduction about you. But then, can you also, guide us in so that the audience also understands what has been your career journey and how you moved from marketing to investments and then from Helion to Fireside.
Sure. Thank you for having me. In fact, it's truly a privilege, and I have really fond memories of my time at FMS. So, pleasure to be here. I would actually call it a series of accidents. And again, I'm not trying to, dramatize the whole experience. But, from campus, I got selected by Hindustan Lever at that point of time and joined them as a management trainee. So first 10 years, I would say were the foundation years where it was all about learning, sales, brands, marketing, got involved in some innovation projects. So I must say that, that was the foundation. And, in hindsight, if I look back today, that was also the first love for consumer brands, which got inculcated because, Lever is such a great learning ground. Got a very orthogonal almost offer from Intel in the late 1997, almost 10 and a half years after I joined Levers, to come and head marketing for South Asia.
Okay.
And, obviously it was intriguing because, although I was an engineer, like Professor Singla said, I had never, practiced engineering kind of discipline even for a day. I was selling soaps and tea and all kinds of consumer products. But the logic that Intel management gave me was quite fascinating. They had just launched their range of what used to be called Pentium MMX semiconductors, the chips. Okay. And they had a big focus on building the consumer space for the computers and the PCs that were happening at that point of time. And their issue was that they had 100% market share in a 0% market. So it was almost a interesting paradigm where they said we don't care about somebody coming and doing marketing for our semiconductors because that they sell because we are really the only game in town. We want somebody to help build the category of the entire computers and PCs and especially home PCs. Okay. So I was hired as a consumer marketing expert into a company which is a like deep tech, extremely frontier of technology kind of a business. And that was quite fascinating because for me, it was almost a sunrise industry and applying some interesting learnings into completely new space. So that was fun. Spent about 3 years from 97 to about 2000. And there, the next accident happened because I got very interested in what was happening on the internet. Okay. And obviously, Intel was powering the internet more from the back end because we had the mega chips for all the large infrastructure, the internet farm, the server, etc., and of course the PCs. But the obviously the excitement was happening more on the front end. So this is the time, if you remember, there were companies like Make My Trip, Naukri.com, a couple of other big ones which eventually didn't survive, who were really talk of town. And there was this buzz around this new concept called venture capital. Okay. And, imagine this is 2000, so really early days of VC. But globally there was a lot of action happening, and Amazon and Google and Yahoo, and these are some big players then. And it was quite a heady day of saying, listen, there's so much entrepreneurial possibility here. And to be honest, I started thinking of, can I do something entrepreneurial? In fact, several of my batchmates and we kind of, dabbled with a few ideas on saying, can we start something of our own? Unfortunately, didn't really come up with something, path shattering. so decided to do the second best, if I may, of getting into the VC space instead of turning entrepreneur.
Okay.
And the time when Carlyle had just set up their Asia office, and they had taken two Intel senior managers to run it for them. And they invited me to join them because they felt that they needed somebody who brought in business perspective and ability to understand businesses. So that was really the, like I said, a very orthogonal move, moving from an operating, background of working as a operating manager into, getting into VC. But the attraction was always that, you get to work with interesting entrepreneurs, and that's really the buzz around it. And that truly has been my biggest learning and continues to be my motivation at this stage of career. That, it's the fun is in really identifying and working with these really exciting, mostly young entrepreneurs. It kind of re-energizes me as well. So that's how Carlyle happened. Spent 4 years there, primarily as an early stage tech investor. And then some, again, a series of accidents happened where Carlyle management changed. They decided to shift from venture to a private equity focus. And I said, I'm not a private equity guy. I will always be a venture guy. So I decided to quit Carlyle, and actually didn't have a job in hand. So it was almost like, I'll figure life out.
Okay.
Fortunately, two of my friends and people that I had known were also contemplating their next career move. So 3 of us got together and started a fund called Helion. And this was in 2005 timeframe. And this was truly the time when India was shining, and there was a lot of excitement and focus on India from global investors. So managed to actually convince some really interesting names like Yale and Princeton and GIC and Stanford and others to invest in the fund. So 10 years.
All marquee names.
It very, very interesting, the fact that they, supported somebody who, came together as a first time group. And, always that's a big apprehension thing, how will these guys work? But, good to know that, we lasted 10 years and I was the culprit who decided to leave. Because what happened is we did, the big box stuff, $600 million, 3 funds, did, a lot of interesting investments, Make My Trip, Big Basket, et cetera. However, there was this little, back of mind thought saying, what's going on in the consumer space. So tried a lot of interesting experiments, restaurant chains, beauty salon chains, we did some eye hospitals, tried some online fashion kind of businesses. So everything that, you would imagine could be an interesting consumer learning. And eventually, I came to this conclusion that maybe the only way to really think about, investment thesis in the consumer space is to do it as an exclusive focus, because there were so many things that would decide the success of these companies. And being in a large tech fund and doing it on the side was probably not the right way to think about it. So that was the next decision. That was not an accident. That was, I would say, a foolish decision to actually quit a fund that I had helped start and step out and actually started Fireside as a family office.
Okay.
So it was my own money. I was writing small checks, taking board seats. So it was a day job. It was not like a classic angel investment where you're doing something else and writing small checks. And those 2 years between 15 and 17 really gave me a deep insight into what was possible. And that, I must say, was the foundation of where we are today. And of course, we'll talk more about it. And the real, I would say the seminal, almost aha moment was that there were 2 trends which were starting to come together. And we started to see evidence of that more and more in real practice. One was that the millennial consumers, enough has been talked about them, millennial, Gen Z, their whole sensibility towards consumption and brands is very different than, say, us, and then, of course, our parents and so on. Because they are aware, they are well connected, they have global exposure, they have lived in a fairly stable economic environment. So now they're demanding things which are, more meaningful. There is more narrative around what is behind the brand and not just a good product. Sure. And they don't have the legacy of saying that it has to be a Unilever or a Procter or a Nestle. They are very experimented, willing to try out. So that became, and they are digitally smart and savvy. And then the digital infrastructure happened, which again has accelerated very rapidly in the last 5-7 years, where now you could engage these consumers, now you could talk to them, and you could sell to them. So, the infrastructure started coming up. And the beauty of India is that over 1 billion consumers, but very few brands. I mean, that's a strange situation for a country and economy like India. But it's not surprising because the cost of building brand, the complexity of building brands in India has always been limited by distribution because of the whole mom and pop store kind of syndrome, and of course cost of advertising, marketing, etc. So both these got busted, or rather, got challenged when this new infrastructure of digital opportunity came up. So that led me to believe that not only is there a scope for a formal fund kind of a construct, but also the value that one can bring as an investor in helping understand this new paradigm of brand building. And that truly was the motivation that I can invest my own money, do well, be successful. And at this stage of career, I'm 57 now, so it's not a financial return motivation, but certainly something bigger than that. And that led me to talk to people in the industry like Premji Invest, Mariwala, Sanjeev Goenka Family Office, Sunil Munjal, Unilever Ventures, ITC. These are all investors in the fund. So it was a very heady feeling that, what I was speculating was a possibility. It got endorsed by almost the entire community, which is really
entire industry, if you may say.
Or everyone, so that's the start of the journey. Let me pause here because I'm sure we'll talk about the fireside experience, but, I just wanted to try and as quickly as possible capture some, how I reach where I am today.
No, thank you, Kanwal. It was quite insightful. We have just started and we are getting so much from you. That's very helpful. Thank you for all the audience who have also joined. We have obviously crowdsourced all the questions that we'll be, throwing at Kanwal today. But if you have any more questions, please feel free to click on the Q&A tab and you can keep sending us your questions and we'll try to cover as many of them as possible today. So Kanwal, this question has come from Rohit Khanna. His question is, what is your personal favorite brand from your portfolio and why? And I see you are having tea. Is that Vadam tea?
It is, yeah, it is.
Which is closest to your heart.
I will not mention a favorite brand because, like kids.
Which one do you use the most?
which is Vadam. I am 100% convert to Vadam now. And being a tea guy in my Lever's experience, I was head of marketing for the tea business. But the interesting thing is that out of the 20 odd companies that we have invested in, I must say at least a dozen of them, we are regular consumers. So one interesting other experience is that unlike in a tech world where, you don't touch and feel your own investment products, here, you have the opportunity to first become the consumer. So, I do online classes with Sarva for yoga. We are regular consumers of Kapiva, Mama, Boat, I can keep going on. But if you have to choose my, the 2 times a day, every day product, that has to be Vadam.
Okay. And next question is from Nitin Kapoor. It's related to more of the startups and investment side. So his question is, what is your investment strategy and what are the things you look for before, in an entrepreneur or in a company before you decide to write the check?
Sure. So investment strategy, like I mentioned, we are an exclusive fund. Again, Professor Singla mentioned it. We are now managing about $170 odd million between the first and the second fund. And we are an early stage, almost like a pre-series A investor in consumer brands. And we typically define consumer brand more as CPG, FMCG, what is called, but not restricted to that. So our strategy is we come in when the company is at a stage where I would say, just early proof of concept, 30, 40, 50 lakhs of monthly revenue. So there is something to show, but obviously a huge, long journey to still go through. We put in a small check. Our typical first check is about $1 million. We can go plus minus on both sides. And then we work very extensively with this company, work in terms of, their marketing strategy and go-to-market channels and helping them with, building the foundations of the organization, helping them with other alternate forms of capital like debt, etc. So it's a very comprehensive, partnership, if I may.
Okay.
And then we are willing to follow that initial money with a second check, which could be anywhere up to $3 to $5 million. So
Proper
the idea,
Series A.
yeah. So, almost like we can lead the second round, we can, do super pro rata, we can work with other investors. And so all of these examples we have already demonstrated. So our journey, we believe, is from a 5 crore revenue, annualized revenue of a company when we come in, to taking them to anywhere from 50 to 75 to 100 crores is where our, best value add or sweet spot is. And at that stage is when you then start looking at, larger investors, the private equity funds and so on and so forth, because you have proven that there is a brand, that there is a huge, channel strategy, the consumers are reacting to your product and your brand. And that, fortunately, journey has got accelerated into faster and faster timelines. So, we have brands like Boat and Mamaearth and Vadam and, Ayurveda Experience and Alpha Vector. I'm just quoting names. All of them have gone beyond 100 crores in 3 years. And some of them have gone much, much larger. And the third part is that because these brands are very, unique situations, because they have good unit economics, they are targeting a certain set of consumers, they are also able to manage this growth in a much capital efficient manner. So in a way, it's the best of both worlds. If you can get that formula right or the playbook right, you can actually build brands today up 300 crores, say with 25, 30 crores of investment, which is, fairly unique in the investment world, because you're from the investment space and, there are others who might have seen that experiences. It is, the curve is not as linear as that. I mean, getting a 3-4x return on capital in the early stage is quite remarkable. And then once they cross 100 crores, they never need money again.
Yeah.
So therefore, it's a completely different paradigm of investing. So that is the first point on the question. And I think I may have answered a few more questions. So I'm trying to.
Yeah.
I think the second part is, what do we look for? Obviously at that stage, there is very little data to evaluate. So there is extraordinary focus on the founding team and the founders, because we are backing somebody who's got the vision, the ambition, the execution capabilities, and in some ways that passion to be able to build a large business. So we want to assess that, and there are no set rules or formulae for that. Obviously, you spend time in understanding their background, to referencing, spend enough time talking to them to understand their value system, etc., etc. But end of the day, it does come out almost as a gut feeling, right? I mean, so you back your gut with a lot of analysis, if I can put it like that. And, hopefully, you can bring in extra value from your end as an investor, so that that combination then gives them, let's call it an unfair advantage to be successful.
Okay. I think you have already answered 3-4 questions which were from different people. So I'll take one of the questions which are coming right now live to us. Ronak has an interesting question. Ronak Singh asked, what is the biggest or investment opportunity you passed on and maybe you missed that you should have definitely invested in that?
So let me say that, obviously the biggest as a group we passed on or not passed on, we were in the process of evaluating, which eventually, there were circumstances where we couldn't do it, was Flipkart. Because we were talking to the founders pretty much as early as, when Accel was also investing in them.
Okay.
And that was obviously, it went on to, would have been multi success. For my personal experience, I would say several companies where, I felt that, and in fact, I would say some of the reason for me to step out of Helion and do something was, at an individual level, there were a lot of things that I always felt that I would like to do. But as a fund, you have your constraints and your things. So companies like Wildcraft, there are several large companies that I would say in hindsight, which we had seen very early on, and we didn't end up investing in. But, I must say the balance is always how many you did invest versus what you didn't.
Yeah.
So I can't complain beyond a point.
That is completely true. And you briefly touched upon this, but I think we do have a lot of questions on D2C brands, CPG brands, and how they are competing against each other,
Sure.
and how the situation has changed or the ecosystem has changed for D2C brands to gain momentum much faster. You briefly touched upon this with Licious and Vahdam Teas. So if you can, brief us and our audience on this, it will be an interesting topic to hear from you.
Sure. So, let me lay out a slightly elaborate thought process that we are kind of, trying to figure out in terms of how the whole momentum has happened. And then I will bring in the COVID experience as a game changer in some sense. So, last 5-7 years ago, if you see, and when I started investing, actively in the consumer space, you had brands like ID Fresh, Paperboard, Epigamia, etc., where the real, I would say, business model was come up with great products, great stories which resonate with your target consumer. So Paperboard or Epigamia, I think ID, they've all done a fantastic job. But their business model was still more or less on the traditional lines of, classic distribution offline and, building it through various types of mass advertising. So they were also doing, the digital stuff, but I would say that was a more, smaller component of their strategy. Fast forward that by 2-3 years, when you started seeing brands like Boat and Mamaearth and, Yoga Bar and Vahdam, who started then taking on the digital first approach.
Okay.
And digital first, I mean, is more a DNA of the business rather than necessarily saying that they will only do D2C, which is typically means your own website, or you will only do, marketplaces like Amazon, Flipkart, or you will not do offline. I think each brand decides their own channel strategy, the timing of that, how you do it. But the DNA of the business, when it becomes digital first, has several components to it. How do you do consumer research? Most of our companies look at reviews on Amazon and Flipkart as their consumer inciting exercise, rather than do formal, offline research that they used to learn in the lever system, for example. How do you do rapid prototyping? How do you do fast launch, fast fail? So your ability to, take that risk of saying, okay, I'll put in 5,000 units, I will check the response, and if it doesn't work, I'll get it out of that. And again, that's a very unconventional way of thinking. How do you build communities? How do you engage your consumer? How do you, talk the language of the same consumer that you're targeting? And the beauty is that because you are not bound by geography anymore because of the physical constraints, you can reach people in the form of interest groups rather than geographic constraints. So, Yoga Bar, when they talk to adventure seekers, that could be anybody all over the country.
Yeah.
Rather than, what do you do in Bangalore and what do you do in Bombay and what do you do in Delhi? So that's the DNA part of it. So that's the second wave, I would call it, brand, 2.0 of the new age millennial brand. Same consumer, but still targeting the consumer. What is happening today is interestingly the 3.0, and, it just started out, where COVID has made digital everything. You want to learn, you go online. You want your entire consultation with a doctor, you go online. You want to do fitness, you go online. You want to do consume products, you go online. So what has happened is that the opportunity of consumption has one more time got redefined in everything that you do, you can do now digitally. So that gives opportunity for another type of new brand which are coming in. And personalization has become the big theme now. So, I'll give you an interesting example of a company in our portfolio, very young company, less than 1 year old,
Okay.
Called Gynoveda. And their business model is that they are providing Ayurveda-based solutions in the form of, Ayurvedic products, which are proven solutions for menstrual health issues of women.
Okay.
But the whole model is built around engaging your consumer online in a very friendly, non-threatening, anonymous way. So that this girl, especially the younger girls who are, from a small city, it's a taboo topic. They don't know who to talk to. They're having some, medical issue, but they don't know what to do about it. You can come online. There's a survey. You can do that as an anonymous survey. It'll diagnose what kind of problem you're facing, and here is a recommendation. Or you can chat with, some of the people behind the company who will give you, all the help and support without being judgmental or without you even having to see their face or them seeing their face. So some of these things, are just starting out has some interesting trends. So I would say that, just D2C as a, is a big word, a sexy word in some sense, has a lot of nuances under it. And the good part is that India, we believe will have thousands of new brands, not even hundreds over the next 10, 15, 20 years. And that's the excitement for us, that, the entrepreneurial, excitement and the energy that is getting released because of this opportunity. And like I said, COVID has truly accelerated that, because everybody today, no matter what age group you are in, is comfortable with the idea of digital consumption. So therefore, suddenly you are, seeing what used to be, we would call boutique or, niche, has become more mainstream. That will, further accelerate the positive cycle of more consumers, more entrepreneurs, more brands. And I must say that even the larger companies, like Professor Singla said, they are reacting. In fact, I had an interesting session along with a colleague of mine 2 days ago with the entire senior management team at Marico. And it was only about saying, what are your learnings in the digital brand space, and how can a company like Marico, and including Saugata, who's the MD and CEO, he was in that session for 1.5 hours.
Wow. Okay. No, I think that's quite interesting. And we have the way you are saying that existing incumbents have also been reacting very fast. We have seen VeggieClean, for example, come out right after COVID because people wanted to wash their vegetables, and it's from our top FMCG player. I'll now want to take a question from Sesumna Cherukuri. Quite an interesting question. She says that with your experience in consumer, D2C brands, and more, what kind of consumer shift do you see because of COVID? Is it there to stay? And do you see any consumer segment which is undervalued and which you would see new startups coming and serving that value?
Sure. So I think at a behavioral level, I do feel that there are trends which are certainly here to stay. I think more digital consumption, more comfort with e-commerce, and e-commerce in a very broad sense, whether it's D2C. Today you have people like Swiggy, people like Dunzo, you have local resident welfare associations. And then, there's this huge juggernaut coming, which I believe will be another game changer through the Reliance JioMart and the whole, program that they are launching. So first, I think that one mega trend of consumption through digital channels is going to be the biggest beneficiary. I think, if at all I can use the word beneficiary in the context of COVID, of this particular, pandemic. Okay. The second one is that, because of that, and then the ecosystem around that, payment systems, distribution, logistics, everything then kind of works around that. Second is that the consciousness and awareness of what you are consuming, whether it's you putting in your mouth or on your body or even, something around you, people are going to now, they will live beyond COVID and still almost, imbibe those sensibilities. Okay. So, clean label, organic, natural, non-preservative, these things which were all, again, millennial terms are starting to become more mainstream. Then I would imagine that, personally, my fond hope is that we will end up in a kinder world. So, people will start thinking about sustainability, about environment, about things like that. So that's at a macro level, I think, and that's where a lot of our brands and I think the overall ecosystem of consumer brands will benefit. Because, as long as you can adapt to some of these, almost behavioral trends. In terms of specific sectoral things, again, if you relate to that, I believe that the whole space of, especially in the food and beverage, around nutrition, around immunity, around healthy eating, around being more conscious of what you eat, is a very big gap, because everybody always felt this was niche, and therefore the big boys are not in that. So, we have companies like Kapiva, which do everyday Ayurvedic products, and they have seen a phenomenal increase in business. Licious, which does, high quality, fresh meat, home delivered. Just the fact that it is hygienic is given them a huge boost, because, everybody is worried about, consuming anything from the local, quote unquote, butchery shop. So that's the other trend. Third is that we believe that the entire, the almost what we are calling nesting or hunkering down at home has shown people there is a new way of living where you're spending more time at home. So, for, what are the trends because of that? I think cooking, ready to cook as a space is seeing a massive increase. Now, people will go out at some point of time, but,
Of course.
at least that balance will get established. So I would say, I would put a lot of focus on food and beverage as an area. I would put a lot of focus on, what you would call clean label, more natural, more Ayurvedic, more traditional, more herbal as another area. And then, of course, the whole space of, now we are starting to see some nutrition products like supplements and nutraceuticals and all that. So as an entrepreneur, I think there's a lot of openings which have come up, and we are starting to see a lot of interesting businesses in spite of all the COVID related issues and so on.
Thank you, Kaval. I think Sasimuna would have got a quite well-rounded answer from you and is satisfied.
Okay.
Just wanted to understand one more thing. So you mentioned this briefly that now with the Reliance Jio coming in, but then if we look at a larger level, it's Jio, Walmart, Amazon, all are going for the retail leadership in India. And what does it entail for consumer brands in India, and what does it entail for the currently existing large FMCG companies or small FMCG companies in India? What is your take on this?
So I think, see, there are, for the new age brands and new entrepreneurs, this is the best thing that could have happened, right? I mean, understanding a new consumer behavior trend and being able to provide relevant products for that is really, like almost like a golden opportunity which you can leverage. And we are seeing that across company after company after company. Now, the interesting thing is that, this is not a static in itself. So what Amazon was 5 years ago, it is completely different what it is today. And I would say 2 years later, it will be completely different because, then what Jio is doing with enabling the local Kirana stores, everybody will have to, get into some kind of a similar arrangement. So I would say that new age brands, absolutely no doubt that this will be a golden period to consider launching brands. I think I would still say as an advice, be very conscious of your value proposition, just don't see, so sanitizers to me is a no-no. I think, unless you have something so breakthrough. So consumer insight, going back to basics is still the best way to do things, right? What is the insight? Why should you be doing what you're doing? How can you stay differentiated? But the choice of channel and engagement with consumer has become far more accessible. And then understanding these things, we do a lot of work. I kept talking about ecosystem and how we help our companies. Navigating Amazon, you can write not one, but many books on it, right? I mean, it's so complex. There are so many different components to that, but there is a method to that madness. And understanding that, and what we are trying to do at our level is, engage at the senior most level at Amazon, talk to the people, talk to the senior leaders and say, how can, not only our companies, 20, 30, 40 companies that we invest in, is there a way we can help understand that complexity for a larger ecosystem? So that would be the first part. I think on the incumbent part, I would say all of them are very conscious. And they're all figuring out their strategy. Now, the strategy can be, what is my digital strategy for my portfolio, which is the most obvious one. And all of them, I can tell you, are actively, putting effort behind it. But a lot of the proactive ones have started thinking of saying, what can I do? Almost like an entrepreneurial thing, saying, can I launch digital first brands? And can I create, like 100 crore, 200 crore brands across 3, 4, 5 categories? Because their strength is R&D, product, supply chain, quality, cost, all of that. What they don't have is really deep understanding on the front end of, how do you engage the consumer, performance marketing, digital marketing, etc. But that's the skill you can learn. It's the DNA of the organization, which is the clash. So how do you get a organization structure? So I would say, to me, the incumbent's bigger challenge will be organizationally, how do you build yourself, or how do you design yourself that you can allow this entrepreneurial energy to happen without being, held back or bottlenecked by larger, systems which exist for hundreds of years.
Does it mean that the new age consumer brands which are coming up, a lot of them will get acquisition offers and some of them will get imbibed into these larger companies?
Potentially, yes. I think certainly, we are already seeing, like I said, our investors are a whole range of the same people, and we know that they are very excited about what we are doing and, looking at acquisition, because, that 0 to 100 crore journey is very different than 100 to 500. And obviously, for the larger players, that 100 to 500 is well mapped out and better understood than the 0 to 100. So yes, I think there is a thing, but I do believe that the kind of size of businesses we are seeing as an investor, I have fond hope that, we will, in my tenure at Fireside, see a few IPOs happening of companies which are built to last and can, really play the next 20, 30-year-old game. Because the entrepreneurs are of the ilk who are keen, or at least several of them are, who are willing to, play that 20-year game and, build a multi-billion-dollar company. So that's the fond dream and hope. However, for us as a practical investment strategy, a lot of the acquisition by strategics and even, selling to large private equity will be a more practical, I think, outcome for us.
Okay. We'll take one more question from this question is from Megha Mathur. Megha's question is related to, okay, I'll rephrase this question a little bit.
Okay.
She wants to understand more about digital community companies, community platforms in India,
Sure.
and how communities as such are being built by these new consumer brands.
Sure. So I think it's a interesting, I would say, paradigm where we are seeing both sides of it. We are seeing companies who started out as community building businesses. So, best example, Better India, they have a 50 million viewers across their platforms talking about just community of people who want to hear good news and
Positive
good
news.
you have Inknut, which has several properties. You had Baby Chakra, which is doing a lot of work around the mom and baby stuff. So what we are finding is a lot of them are starting to now see that community as a very interesting example of where they can bring in more products.
Okay.
Because they understand the community. The global best example of that is or a fashion magazine which got started called The Gloss, which led then the founder to launch Glossier, which is $1 billion D2C consumer first cosmetics business in the US. So I think that's one aspect of it. And, it's a legitimate way of doing it. I would argue anybody who's doing a community first approach needs to just make sure that they understand the tenets of how e-commerce works and what the product story fit is. On the other hand, all our companies, whether it's Yoga Bar, whether it's Mamaearth, whether it's Boat, they have almost like this is their brand pillar to engage the communities and build the communities. I'll take an example with Boat. They have a community of 1 million followers on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, etc., whom they call boat heads.
Okay.
And even though till now, and now we have started doing it, till 6 months ago, Boat did not even have a shopping button on their website. They were selling only through Amazon, Flipkart, and all other channels. The fact that they still have over 1 million visitors every month coming to their website, that's the power of the engagement. So, and that's the moat for the brand over the long term, is not just giving you a product which is good price, good product, but also engaging you as a community. So I think I would say community is a very central part of any digital brand, whichever way you look at it, whatever your point of start is. So certainly worth thinking about for an entrepreneur pretty much from the early days.
Thank you, Kawal. We have questions from Alicia, and there was one more person. Similar question. Question is related to how much valuation matters when you are looking at from a VC perspective.
I mean, it does matter. So I don't know if there's a nuance to the question. Maybe I'll try and, give a little flavor to it. Because I'm not very sure of the context of the question. Of course, the whole business of VC is what value you get in, what value you get out. But I think what we have realized, and probably this is a more serious way of thinking about it, is that these businesses that we invest in, like I said earlier, they are very efficient businesses, or they should be very capital efficient businesses. Sure. So at the right point, when they achieve 50, 75, 100 crores of revenue, you really don't need to raise too much more money. And also there are other forms of capital that become available to you. We have helped our companies raise debt from banks, from NBFCs, from family offices, from venture debt funds. So therefore, ownership for us is more important than, more important relative to say valuation and the amount of money.
Okay.
So what that means is that when we come in the beginning, we need to see a certain ownership because, we are spending a lot of time, effort, and we are going to have a small portfolio. So we don't want to have, 50 companies with 5% each and, hope that, something will work out. So we are far more, concentrated. We want 20-25% ownership and so on. And therefore valuation and the amount of money, because that formula of what value and what amount of money equal to the shareholding, that balance has to be managed. So yes, valuation is important, but ownership is probably even more important.
Okay. We have another interesting question. This is related to if a new consumer brand is starting out, what should be the focus of that brand? Should we just have one product and they should be trying and getting as many users for that product, or should they have a line of products and then try and get customers to purchase other products from them?
So I mean, again, very tough to generalize it, but let me share some
other examples you have seen.
Yeah, some learnings. I think one is clearly the idea of having digital first, whether it's your website or whether it's through channels like Amazon, Flipkart, is it gives you what people call unlimited shelf life. So therefore, shelf space. Sorry, not shelf life. So what that does is that it allows you to experiment more. And what we have seen is that most of these startups, they do create a range of products to identify the winners. So like I called it earlier, rapid prototyping, quick testing, fast launch, fast fail, all of these concepts, become tenable. If you're in a typical distribution offline business, putting large number of SKUs on a shelf and, then inventory issues happen, they don't get sold, there's a whole cycle which comes up. So that is, I would say, philosophically one way of thinking about it, that, till you identify what is your hero product, you have the ability to experiment a lot. And obviously, what you can do on your own website gives you far more data, far more insights, but then, there's a cost of advertising, etc. While you can put it on the Amazon and the Flipkarts to get a quicker understanding of consumer feedback, reviews, rating, all of that stuff. So I would encourage that, at least from anecdotal evidence of what we have seen, that have a innovation engine which is churning very rapidly. And then, of course, once you identify what are your 3 or 4 or 5 big winners, then, you start doubling down on that. You start investing more specifically on those products. So, then if you look at, say, performance marketing, instead of saying, come to my website and buy a range of products, then you start actually advertising for those specific products which you can see as higher response. And of course, if you are doing specially on your own website story, then having a larger range gives you the ability to upsell, cross-sell, and so on. So directionally, I think you have to build a larger portfolio. Okay. And because now we are seeing across every category the whole concept of sourcing from, even if you are working with third-party manufacturers, there is far more flexibility that we are able to see across categories in smaller batch sizes, ability to quickly work with these partners and launch multiple different SKUs, etc. So all of this allows you the almost the flexibility of more experimentation. But having launching with one product and that's all you do, I think that's a higher risk strategy. But I don't want to generalize it and say don't do it. I'm just saying these are the things to keep in mind.
Okay, Kawal, we have one question from Tanuja. Tanuja wants to understand what is your advice for entrepreneurs when they are creating a brand name? Should they be having something like ID Fresh, which can be applied to a number of products, or should they be having something like a Beardo, which started from beard oils, or Bombay Shaving Company, which started from shaving apparatus, but now is trying to go into Beardo, is trying to go into beard oil, etc. And I am assuming that with their kind of experience with obviously Unilever first, and then Helion, and then Fireside now, what is your take on this?
Again, very tough. I mean, it's a conflicting answer and controversial. So I'll still, give my opinion. I think more and more the opportunity to build platform plays, more and more the opportunity to stand for a value system, and therefore stretch your brand across different categories and even different types of products that you are selling, is allowing, is, or rather the, again, the internet digital first kind of concepts are allowing that to happen. So, a company like Mamaearth, Vadam, Boat, these are the kind of people who, have taken big advantage of that. Mamaearth, if you see, it caters from everything from, mosquito sprays for the baby to, the more conventional, the shampoos and the, the powder, to now a lot of beauty products. So they have onion oil based hair masks, all under that, that promise of natural, safe for you and your child. So I would err on the side of more platform plays.
Okay.
However, the obvious flip side to that is that if you want to go very deep vertically into a specific category, then obviously, you want to own that space. So a beardo, if it was, if you believe that, just the beard as a functional area is so powerful, but then, you are restricted from going, or you can have a strategy of a house of brands where you have, sub brands which are catering to that. But then, investing in multiple layers of brand becomes even more complex. So I would err on the side of slightly more, generic, almost like value system, because the platform play is really becoming, like Kapiva is a great example. Kapiva actually comes from Kapiva, which is Kapha Pita Varta, which is actually the tenets of Ayurveda.
True.
So they are saying we will bring you everything Ayurveda for your everyday consumption. Now that allows them such a fantastic ability to stretch yourself, and you may still have some sub brand if they feel that, say, we want to launch supplements, which is a very unique category. We can do it as a sub brand under that category. So I can go on. This is a debate, but it's
Sure.
also a contrarian debate to what we learned in our day that some large FMCG companies. So yeah, I mean, as I said, it's controversial, but that's my point of view.
We have again this question from a lot of participants earlier who had sent their questions to us. Question is related to how does one move? So there are basically two parts of this question. If you're already working in a corporate environment, how do you move to a VC? If you are a fresher right out of MBA and you do not have a finance background, how do you move into a VC role?
I mean, I think VC is overrated.
Okay.
I think my bridge answer would be try working in a startup, try working in an environment which gives you exposure to, the chaos, the excitement, the jugaad, the whole, different mental energy of seeing something getting built out of nowhere. So for me, the bridge to VC is more of, stepping into the younger company. Let's not call it only startup. And that then gives you the confidence saying, okay, I have understood this journey and I do it. I don't think a finance degree is the conditionality for joining a VC. A lot of VCs, in fact, in my team, we have hired people from more consumer background than from the finance background kind of credentials. But if you're looking at more classic tech type of plays, then obviously, having a technology background and understanding of deep tech and then getting into VC is probably more relevant. So I would say that from a experience point of view, to me, that is a journey that I would personally recommend. However, as an analyst, FMS is a top MBA school, and there are lots and lots of private equity and VC firms hire people after MBA in analyst type of roles. So that path is always open. And I don't think you should worry so much about the finance degree side of it. It's really the orientation. But personal advice, VC is in a many ways a one-way street. So, don't think of jumping into it till you are absolutely sure that this is what you want to do.
Thank you, Kaval. This was quite helpful for all our audience members. We are already getting messages from everybody. We will take, since obviously we're running out of time, we'll take one last question. It is related to reading. So one person asks, Sumit, what are you reading currently? And where do you get your daily dose of information and knowledge from? And Akshat Biani asks, what is the best strategy to learn pricing for a product and what should I be reading for the same?
I don't read anything. That's the biggest loss for me is it's become so it's almost a 24/7 thing. Something is always on your mind. I normally stay very closely in touch with global writings around places like Medium and Fast Company and some of these others because there is and even the large consulting firm McKinsey and Bain, etc. So my dose of what's happening around us really comes from just staying in touch with more the published material. If you ask me what book am I reading, answer is nothing. And unfortunately that's the tragedy of not having that much time to give myself.
And what about if somebody wants to understand about pricing? Any good books you would recommend to them?
I think Professor Singla may have something to advise. I really don't have any. I mean, I can check with some of my colleagues, who might have something, then I can get back to you guys. But I unfortunately don't have any advice.
No, I'll request Akshat to get in touch with Professor Singla in that case.
Sure.
He would be the right person to help him out on this question. Kaval, it was a lovely day and you have made it lovelier. Thank you for giving us your insights. Singla sir, over to you now. Thank you, Kaval. Thank you, Singla sir.
Thank you very much, Joaib and Kamal. I'm getting educated. I am educated from a consumer marketing expert to a deep tech company and to a person who says ownership up to the extent of 25% is important. I'm so very glad to talk to you today. I did come across that movie, Accidental Prime Minister.
Okay.
I didn't know that someone like Kamal will come and tell us that there could be accidental CEO also. Great. So, beautifully said, DNA of the business is important and there must not be any clash between DNA and strategy. I think could not have said better than that. I'm a great fan of value system and the fact that you re-emphasize that value system is going to be important. On one side, we emphasize too much on business analytics, and here is a CEO managing money, hard-earned money, saying that back your gut. Very, very important. Analytics is only to consolidate your guts, but gut is going to be your personal. Digital first and part of the engagement and businesses make building up communities. I think beautifully said, Kamal. We're so grateful to you for this wonderful talk this afternoon and tell you frankly, I'm feeling proud all over again of producing such MBAs from FMS, from that small red building of big dreams. So my compliments to you, congratulations to you, and thanks to you on behalf of all the participants, faculty members, the brand FMS, all the people who have joined this webinar, and we will love to have you also on the campus next time when we have the possibility immediately after the COVID-19 happened, decides to go back to where it came from. Hope it goes back. And Joaib, beautifully handled. Thank you very much for such wonderful hosting. And I think you are becoming a pro on this. So we are also grateful to moderators, Nitin and Dheeraj, who have done so much of work in the background, and the students who are from the ALMSOC of FMS. Josh is already there in the group right now. So who have communicated extensively with all the alumni. And once again, please accept our gratitude. Thank you. I wish it was a physical meeting so that we could have offered you a cup of tea from FMS canteen, but then no problem. That remains due. Thank you very much and God bless.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.